Welcome to the Nassau County Supervisor of Elections Candidate Forum. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Sean McGill. I'm a member of the board of the Chamber of Commerce as well as a member of the Government Affairs Committee. Normally, we'd have a room full of people, but as you know, times are different. So our candidates are looking at cameras. And if you've been on my social media, I posted a picture of what they're seeing, and I promise you it's not a selfie of me. We'd really like to thank KBJR Media for helping produce this. They're responsible for the cool graphics that you will be seeing at the bottom of the screen. And now I'll tell you guys a little bit what we're going to do. Each of our candidates for Supervisor of Elections are going to give up to 5 minutes, to tell you a little bit about themselves and why they're running. And then we'll go through a series of questions. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer that question, and we'll rotate through who starts the questions first, so each of you will have a chance to be in the hot seat first. Sound good? Okay. Well, I'd like to introduce our candidates for Supervisor of Election, Mrs. Janet Adkins, Mr. Stan Bethea, and Mr. Justin Taylor. So with that, Mrs. Adkins.
Elections are at the core of our republic. They define us as a nation, and they give us a voice. My name is Janet Adkins, and I'm running to be the next Supervisor of Elections because I believe that our freedom depends on the security of the ballot box. Elections are important. In a world where every day we're told that our voices don't matter, that they're not important, every American, when they mark that ballot, they have the opportunity to impact history. And so it's important that we protect the right of every American to vote, that we ensure the security of that ballot box, and that we make sure every vote is counted. Nassau County voters have a tremendous history of showing up on Election Day. For the last 2 general elections, Nassau County voters have exceeded the state average by 2%. In 2012, 79% of Nassau County voters made their voices heard. And I believe that's in part due to the fantastic Supervisor of Elections that we currently have, Vicki Cannon and her team of election professionals that she has assembled in Nassau County. We are a growing community, and as such, we are facing a rising number of challenges, such as COVID-19 and the economy. And so it's essential that we have a Supervisor of Elections that is who can lead and who can inspire. I have the right balance of experience and leadership to maintain the public's confidence in our election process. The Supervisor of Elections must be a strong leader. They must be skilled not only in Florida statutes and in election law, but also in communications and public relations. Experience and trust matter. You know me. I have served you in public office for 18 years. Perhaps what you don't know about me is that I have just as many years working in the private sector. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Science and a Master of Business Administration from the University of North Florida. Prior to my time in public office, I worked for 12 years for an information technology firm where I did software development, project management, and I was a client partner. For the last 4 years, I've served as the Chief Administrative Officer for our family business, where I've engaged in implementing software technology and budgeting and everything, including developing infection control policies. Now, some have asked me, Janet, why is it important that we have someone who has a blend of experience, of both private sector experience and public service? And I believe it's important because it impacts the lens from which we view problem solving. Now, I've worked with individuals who've been in the government sector for 20, 30 years, and they're great people. They serve a wonderful purpose. But typically, the lens through which they view things is based on what's in the best need of government. What does government need? And so I believe it's important that we have a blend of both public service and private sector experience. And I believe that's because it will help you as you're budgeting, that you know you need to do more with less, that you know how to do more with less. Now, it's widely expected that we will be entering a recession. And so with that, we can anticipate budget cuts. And so that's why I believe it's important that we have someone who knows how to improve processes and that we have someone who can maintain confidence in our elections office. Elections have consequences. There are no do-overs. The SOE must be a public, trusted servant and must convey confidence in the election process. I'm running to be your next supervisor of elections because our freedom depends on safe, accessible, and secure elections. I ask for your vote on August 18th.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Mr. Bethea, introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning. I'm Stan Bethea, and I'm currently running for Nassau County Supervisor of Elections. I'm currently on the senior staff in Duval County Elections Office, serving as Chief Elections Officer and Director of Information Systems. Some people think elections are a 9-to-5 job, but when it gets into the election cycle, the job is many, many more hours than that, long weekends and late nights. There's no do-overs. We have to be right every time. I'm the election specialist who can provide fair, honest, and accurate elections in Nassau County, as I've done in my past 14-year career in Duval County Elections Office. Today I'll introduce myself, tell you a little about who I am, a little about what I've done in my elections career, and why I'm fully qualified for the position of Nassau County Supervisor of Elections. So thank you, Chamber, for giving us the opportunity. I'm a Nassau County native. Callahan is my home. It's where I grew up. It's where my family and I live now. My roots in Nassau County go back to at least the 1840s, and I got tired of looking after that. In my career, I've taken promotional opportunities when they came along, first at JEA, then the City of Jacksonville Information Technology Department, and currently with the Duval County Supervisor of Elections Office. So the question I get asked a lot is, why Stan? What do I uniquely bring to the table? Well, I started working with the Duval County Elections Office in 2004. Started working for the Duval Elections Office in 2005, and assumed my current duties in 2006. We've run elections under threat of hurricane, power outages, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. I've learned from two of the best supervisors in the state, Jerry Holland and Mike Hogan. For 43 elections, 4 gubernatorial, and now I'm in my 5th presidential cycle, I've served as a senior leadership team and led the technical side of elections in Jacksonville, knitting the various systems and processes together to achieve election success, and sat across a window from the news media on election night as results came in. This year, approximately a dozen or so supervisors of elections in Florida are retiring, including our own Ms. Cannon. Often, a seasoned member of the senior staff, someone with actual elections experience, runs and gets elected into the position. For me, it's a little different, living in Nassau, working in Duval. Administering elections isn't something you learn overnight. I've been in this business for 14 years and I'm still learning elections, rules, court cases, best practices, and on and on. The elections process, the registration process, ballot layout, vote counting, reporting, it's all computerized now. Even the precincts are interconnected on election day. Never dreamed when I was studying computers years ago at UNF I'd be using them to run elections. I've earned both my state and national election certifications. The state certification was through the Florida Supervisor of Elections Association. The national certification was in conjunction with Auburn University. My platform, Supervisor of Elections, is unlike other constitutional officers. The supervisor does not enforce laws like the sheriff, collect monies like the tax collector, assign property value like the property appraiser, and set tax rates like the county commission. The supervisor serves a purely ministerial role. I'll continue to run the office in a nonpartisan and balanced manner to convey the choice and the voice of the people. Stan in a nutshell, election educated. Computer degree from UNF and more election seminars and classes than I can count. Election certified, certified at both the state and national level. Election experienced, 14 years and 43 elections as the one behind the scenes making the various pieces and systems work together in harmony. So that's a little of who I am, a little of my qualifications, what I've actually done in the elections field. Others can talk about what they would like to do in the elections office. I can show you what I've actually done over 14 years and 43 elections. I'm an elections professional, not a career politician running from job to job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. Mr. Taylor.
Well, thank you. And of course, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. Thank you, Sean, for moderating. And thank you to the media company. And I also want to, of course, thank Janet and Stan. This has been a very tough process during COVID-19 and how we're able to get out there and share our message and our platform. But again, that's why I really want to thank the Chamber for putting this together. My name is Justin Taylor, and I am honored to be a candidate for Nassau County Supervisor of Elections. My wife, Shannon Taylor, is an occupational therapist with Great Strides Rehab and UF Health Jacksonville. And my son, Braden, is an excited 10-year-old who loves to just get into everything still. My passion for this process, for the elections process, really started more than 12 years ago when I was advocating for one of my biggest passions, and that's the foster care system. I was in Tallahassee, and I was meeting with several of our state leaders and realized how critical it is and how fortunate we are to elect these leaders. I've always said that one of our greatest rights is to elect the men and women who serve for us, for the citizens. And it's a process that should be fair, secure, and accurate. And that philosophy is why I'm so passionate about protecting our voter integrity. I currently serve as a Nassau County Commissioner, where I've been chairman of the County Commission. I've served as chairman of the Essential Housing Advisory Committee. I've been a policy leader for the Florida Association of Counties. I've been a graduate of the association's inaugural leadership forum, and I've been recognized 3 years in a row as a presidential advocate for the Florida Association of Counties for my leadership experience in working hard to protect home rule here in Nassau County. In addition to that, I've worked with on various programs to improve workforce housing. I've engaged the Army Corps of Engineers to address flooding issues. I've established the Fire Watch here in Nassau County, which addresses veteran suicide. And I've also supported public safety measures for all of our residents. Prior to my time as a county commissioner, I served as the public information officer for the property appraiser's office, where some of my duties included, of course, customer service, public outreach, and operations. During my time there, through working with the property appraiser and other key staff, we were able to implement various programs and initiatives that help the office run more efficiently and ultimately save thousands in tax dollars. Prior to my time there, I was a small business owner, owned and operated an event rental management company, and through that I was able to, of course, manage a team, manage a budget, and produce things in a timely manner. My candidacy for running for supervisor of elections really stems and focuses on some critical components. One, voter education and outreach. I think it's critical that we focus on really getting out to the public and building the excitement and why should they vote. Working with the Chamber of Commerce on some initiatives, working with the libraries, the schools, other youth programs are key ways and we can build excitement around the process and improve voter turnout. I have had the privilege of doing this for a while now, even prior to my time as a county commissioner, where I've coordinated and facilitated various programs, whether it be with Leadership Nassau and hosting their government day, where we focused on some of the civics and the local, state, and federal elections, or even within our schools, and really helping to just get them all excited and make them more aware of the elections process. In addition to that, I want to continue working with the other key shareholders and key offices within the county. Currently, the Supervisor of Elections, they are able to utilize shared resources with the property appraiser, with the tax collector, and with the Board of County Commissioners so they can keep the costs down. Helps with the security systems, helps with manpower on election day, and it's been estimated that over the last 5 years, there's been roughly $6 million saved in this collaborative effort. So I want to continue moving forward in that way. But in addition, fair, secure, and accurate elections are critical. It's focusing on attention to detail. It's preserving and protecting the ballot and making sure that everybody, when they come in to vote on election day, that their vote is going to count. It's easy and it's accessible and transparent elections. My goal, my hope, is to bring my leadership experience into that office so we can have efficient, safe, secure elections. My name is Justin Taylor, and I would be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, I think we've warmed up a little bit, but we'll start with an easy question. Unfortunately for Mrs. Adkins, she's the first one in the hot seat. So we can go to the website and see what the Supervisor of Elections job description is, but in your own words, tell us a little bit about what the job duties are for the Supervisor of Elections.
Sure. So the job duties of the Supervisor of Elections are quite varied. You are responsible for voter registration, making sure that citizens in Nassau County, anyone who is eligible to vote, can be registered to vote. And to do that, I would use the ERIC system, the Electronic Registration Information System, to have a targeted approach to improve voter registration in Nassau County. So you're responsible for registration. You're responsible for the voter roll maintenance. And again, you can use that ERIC system to ensure that you are keeping those voter rolls up to date. That's a very important aspect, especially when it comes to security of the ballot box. The third thing is you're responsible for candidates and making sure that candidates have the necessary information that they need to be on that ballot. When you really think about it, freedom is defined by the number of choices that we have. And so helping and ensuring that candidates have all the information they need in order to be able to be on that ballot, that really impacts the voter's ability to have that choice on the ballot. And then also they're responsible for the election day duties, making sure that poll workers are trained and that they're competent so that voters have confidence in the voting system. So everything that happens election day, everything that happens up before election day in preparation, that training component, as well as counting the votes and making sure those votes are tallied correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Mr. Bethea.
Well, the Supervisor of Elections has many duties, voter registration, voter roll maintenance, vote counting, all of those things. The Supervisor of Elections gets sued on a pretty regular basis by some group or entity. It's the defending of those lawsuits. It's the explaining why things were done the way they were done in accordance with statute. It is looking at legislation that comes down and court cases that come down and seeing how do they fit in the operation, what needs to change, what are the consequences of that legislation and court decision. Those are just a few of the duties that the supervisors do.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. The primary role really is to administer all elections in accordance with Florida Code. Additional functions of the office include, of course, voter registration, voter education, outreach, working with the candidates, and so it's incumbent upon the person in this position to really find more efficient ways to perform these duties. Along with that is, of course, training of the staff and properly testing of the equipment to ensure the equipment works on election day, so you don't have any flaws and you don't have any issues when it's really crunch time.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And this is actually a follow-up question to that, and we'll start with Mr. Bethea. So election season is typically in the fall. So what do you do the rest of the year?
Well, in my current role in Duval County, we hold election for unions, schools, churches. If some group has an election they want us to run, we contract out with those folks to run those. When we have off-time systems need to be updated, that's when we do maintenance on the system. That's when we do repairs on the system. That's when we do our voter roll maintenance. We can't maintain voter rolls within 90 days of an election. We do address changes, move voters where they come and go from and to during that period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. Mr. Taylor.
And one of the biggest goals for me, again, going back to the voter outreach, would be during that time really reaching out to the public and really trying to beef up our voter registration. But in addition to that, it's training the staff, making sure that the staff is trained, well, that they're trained properly, and so they can perform the duties every other year when that time comes. But I know here in Nassau County, they continue to work hard, they continue to train, test all their equipment, and of course get out in the public doing mock elections as they should be.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mrs. Adkins.
Working in the Supervisor of Elections office, it is truly a full-time job. You are involved in voter registration and, of course, the voter roll maintenance. But another important aspect is making sure the security of the hardware and the software that's being used during that election cycle. So engaging in hardware refresh, reviewing the updates to that hardware, making sure that you're looking at the removable devices of that hardware to make sure that it's not been compromised with malware. Those are all very important things that need to be done continuously throughout the year. Now, of course, there's also community engagement, but one thing that's not been mentioned is working with our legislature. So it's widely expected that we'll be entering a recession, that with that will come budget cuts, working with our legislative leaders so that we can make sure Nassau County gets our fair share of the CARES funding, I think is going to be a very important aspect. And then finally, I would propose that we work with the TV and radio stations to engage in some public service announcements so that we can communicate more actively with the electorate on very important electoral dates.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Okay, you guys have all touched on this next one. We'll be starting with Mr. Taylor. Do you think Nassau County has a voter registration or voter turnout issue? And if so, what will you do to correct that?
I think as far as turnout, our turnout numbers have been fair. But I believe it's our most important right is to be able to get out there and elect our leaders. And you often hear if you don't vote, don't complain. But really, at the end of the day, we want as many people out there voting as they can. And that's why I think it's important that we create those partnerships to really expound upon that. Let's improve in that area. Partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce in hosting various programs. It could be partnerships with Rotary or other civic organizations to really improve upon that. But then really diving into our younger generation, getting into our schools, getting into our libraries, other youth organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, so we can explain to them really the process and why it's so important that we do that. Because ultimately, as they get older, they're going to go to the ballots, or they're going to go to the polls when they turn 18 and hopefully cast their ballot, and that'll improve our voter turnout and voter registration numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mrs. Adkins.
So clearly, I think in terms of voter turnout, Nassau County has a strong history of exceeding the state average. As I mentioned earlier, consistently we exceed that state average, and in 2012, our general election, we had a 79% turnout in Nassau County. That's absolutely fantastic. As I'm working in our family business, I can tell you that there are always people who are eligible to vote but have not been registered to vote. Now, there's been a lot of work done in our high schools and with our motor vehicles, where when you get the driver's license, you can register to vote. And that has done a lot towards helping make sure that our voter registration numbers are up. But I still think that there's more that we can do there. I believe one of the things we can do is to reach out to our seniors and those that are disabled, and even those who are in our state licensed facilities, and make sure that they have access to being able to register to vote. I'm working with the Chamber of Commerce to ensure that voter registration is easily available, and even going to jury duty and making sure that while you're sitting there waiting to be called, you have the opportunity to register to vote. But not only that, we could use that opportunity to help voters update their signature card. So I believe there's a lot that we can do. Yes, we can always do better, and I believe communication is the key to improving voter registration and voter turnout.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Mr. Bethea.
That's a tough subject. People are generally creatures of habit. If they want to turn out and vote, they will. If they don't want to turn out and vote, they won't. Voter registration is available at the driver's license office, where you buy your hunting and fishing license. Public assistance facilities, we're mandated to go into adult living facilities and help with supervised voting. And really, if someone wants to register, they've got ample opportunity. Voter turnout, generally turnout is driven by candidates and issues. That's why for a presidential, you'll have 80, 90% turnout. For a single tax referendum, you may be down in the 20s or 30%. So generally, if people want to vote, there's ample opportunity for them to vote, and they make the choice to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. Sorry about that. We're going back to Mrs. Adkins for this one, and nationally, we can't get away from it. There's been a lot of discussion about the security and integrity of our elections. What will you do to ensure the integrity of our elections here in Nassau County?
So the security of our elections here is really multifaceted, and I think you constantly have to be aware of what is possible. That's one of the reasons why I believe having a degree in information science and having experience in information technology, it gives you the ability to understand what is possible. And so, as I stated earlier, I think that making sure that we have security of the ballots, number one, is first and foremost. Making sure that our voter rolls are updated is also an important component. Training of our staff, whether they be poll workers or professionals in the elections office, those are all very critical steps to ensure that we have security within our election process. And then you also need to make sure that your hardware is refreshed and maintained on a periodic basis, and that you've got good technology in place. We always do an audit at the end of each election, and in Nassau County we use 2 different systems, so that, and I think that's actually good because it really is provides that balance and that assurance that every vote is counted and that it's counted accurately.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Mr. Bethea.
Security, election security is important. The state mandates release levels of software that we can be on. The state mandates what hardware we can use. And so we're somewhat bound by those restrictions. But at the same time, Florida uses paper ballots. You can always go back to the paper and see how the folks voted. You can always go back to the ballot and prove what the vote counts were. You can always go back and see what was the choice of the people that was made. Voter roll maintenance is also very important. The ERIC system is really just a clearinghouse for voters. So when a voter registers in one state, the other state knows it and can take them off their rolls. But you've got the paper at the end of the day to go back to prove the votes.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, voter security is important. It's critical. And we've been fortunate enough over the last 20 years, we've had a supervisor who's really focused on the integrity and has worked hard to really instill the confidence here in Nassau County. The ERIC system is great. It's a great system, so you don't have duplicates nationwide. In addition, of course, training the staff, making sure they're properly trained. It's in testing the equipment, testing for vulnerabilities. Can't stress that enough, because you cannot have on election day issues, whether it's the eVids when you go and check in, or whether it's the tabulators at the end of the day. You've got to make sure that all of your equipment is going to be tested properly, and so the tallies can be accurate, and all the votes will certainly count.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And for our production team, this is moderator's prerogative. We're going to throw a wild card question in, so there won't be a graphic on this one, but we'll start with Mr. Bethea. And you guys have all touched on this. What's the role of the Chamber of Commerce in working with the Supervisor of Elections?
Good question. In past, supervisors of elections have used a adopt a precinct model, where businesses will come in, adopt a precinct, provide the staff of the precinct, pay the workers to work that day. In some cases, those are members of a fraternity, sorority, civic group, something like that. They don't donate their monies to their cause. The cause gets money. The people get to be together and adopt a precinct for the day, and things like that. Another thing is, my wife is a school teacher. She took advantage of Florida Forestry Tour a few years ago, where teachers were shown sawmills and pulp mills and the wood forestry industry in Nassau County. Having something like that with the chamber to let the voters know exactly how the system works, the security behind the scenes, would be a very good thing in going forward, to let the voters know just how the system really does work behind the scenes.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. Mr. Taylor.
No, great question. As a commissioner, I value the chamber's input. I value what they do for this community. Have worked with Regina and other members with the chamber for many years, even prior to my time as a commissioner, when I was going through the Leadership Nassau program, and saw what they were really doing, trying to build a leadership community, a community of leaders. But the chamber's role, we're seeing it right now. We're seeing it through these forums that they're hosting, where they understand the pandemic that we're in and the issues that we're dealing with social distancing. They've come up with the innovative ideas to do a presentation, a video presentation, such as this. But getting involved and being kind of an outlet for the public to see the candidates, in addition to just having the dialogue and having the communication with them, so we can improve voter registration, work with them on various, whether it's programs or whatever we come up with, to really establish those programs to improve voter turnout.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mrs. Adkins.
Small business is the backbone of our economy, and certainly I think the Chamber of Commerce will serve three primary roles in working with the supervisor elections. First, I believe that helping to assist with voter registration drives, working with the small businesses that are members of the chambers to ensure that all of those employees have the ability to vote on Election Day. Second is I believe that they can be helpful in terms of recruiting poll workers and providing assistance in the training of those poll workers. I think those are two very important parts. And then finally, I would say that the Chamber of Commerce, perhaps the most important role of the Chamber of Commerce, is that the Chamber holds government accountable. And so whenever there's an issue that comes up in government, the Chamber always makes their voice heard. And I can tell you, I have listened very closely to the voice of the Chamber, and that's evidenced by my time in Tallahassee. I consistently received 100% A+ rating from the Chamber because I know how hard it is to work in a small business, to make ends meet, to have to do more with less. And so the Chamber plays an important role for many reasons, but I would say primarily for those three.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Okay, guys, big breath. We're at our last question. And as a wrap-up question, you will have 2 minutes to answer it. We'll be starting with Mr. Taylor. And it's simply, why are you the best candidate for this position?
What I'm going to bring to this position is leadership experience. Someone who's been active in the community, who works within the community, within the Nassau County community. Someone who can build relationships. Someone who's worked with many people, whether they're elected or private citizens, to really achieve a common goal. I'm solutions oriented. If there's a problem, I'm going to look for ways to find a solution. I'm someone who wants to be proactive. Proactive in finding ways to really accomplish whatever the task is. You're not going to find me sitting behind a computer in the Supervisor of Elections office. Instead, you're going to find me, involved in all facets of the Supervisor of Elections office, so we can look for ways to improve efficiency and find better ways to perform the duties, and of course continue to instill the public confidence in the elections process. I do want to take this time and of course thank again Janet and Stan for their for being here. I want to thank Regina and Sean and the media company. This has been a great opportunity for everyone, and it's important that we continue even in a time like this with this pandemic. It's important that everyone still has that opportunity. They still have the right to vote and have fair, secure, and accurate elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mrs. Adkins.
The Supervisor of Elections is perhaps the most important office that's on the ballot this August. And that's because the Supervisor of Elections holds the public's trust. Trust in our elections process is critical in order to ensure the safe transfer of power. And it's a key qualification for our next Nassau County Supervisor elections. Trust is not built in a day. Now, some have suggested that having experience running elections equipment is the most important qualification. I would respectfully disagree. I would suggest that the most important qualification is someone who holds the public's trust. Like Rome, trust is not built in a day. It takes time to build. It requires relationships. You must have a proven track record. Trust is earned. So you know me, Nassau County. I have served you for 18 years. I have experience leading. I have experience budgeting. I have experience in policy development. I have experience in accounting. I have experience in project management. And so my name is Janet Adkins. I'm someone you can trust. I ask for your vote on August 18th.
Thank you, Mrs. Adkins. Mr. Bethea.
Again, thank you, Chamber, for inviting us here today. It all comes down to elections experience, knowing what to do. In this race, I'm the only candidate with over a decade of election experience on nearly 46 elections as an election administrator. I'm the only candidate certified at both the state and the national level. Our competitors both have involvement in the legislative branch of government. However, neither has work history in elections administration. Nothing replaces hands-on understanding earned at a Supervisor of Elections office. I've gained that knowledge over 14 years and 43 elections. I ask the voters of Nassau County to allow me to use my elections experience to serve them. Stan Bethea for Supervisor of Elections. I ask for your vote on August 18th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. And I want to thank all the candidates again. We've had a great discussion, and I think it's important to have wonderful choices that you guys have brought up. So again, thank you, Mrs. Janet Adkins, Mr. Stan Bethea, and Mr. Justin Taylor. And if you'd like to find out more about these candidates, you can go to the Chamber's website, nassaucountyflchamber.com, where you'll have our candidate questions, as well as our other candidate forums, such as our Superintendent of Schools that we broadcast last week. Moving forward, we'll have our Board of County Commission forum next week, followed by our school board, and then later in the summer, some of our municipal election forums. Again, big thank you to KBJR Media for making this all happen. And of course, none of this is worthwhile without having you guys watch it and learn more about our candidates. Stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.